My name is Maureen Ariate and I am currently taking up a Masters in Education, English. Something a little about me is that I am a shy yet competitive person. I like to achieve academic excellence before I reach the age of 30. Some might find me very intimidating, but in reality I am just one of you people. I like to read books and my favorite authors are Haruki Murakami and Margaret Atwood. I draw and I write non-academic stuff. My taste in everything is a mixture of my personality. In this video presentation, I chose not to narrate it using my own voice because of the unnecessary background noises at home. I used a text-to-audio generator app to present my research, but rest assured that all words are from my own. To Miss Cheryl, I would love to thank you for the patience and consideration that you have given your class. I am thankful for your drive and perseverance. I hope you are given more opportunity and recognition in your work because I think you are doing an excellent job. As subtle racial slights that can be insensitive or hurtful, racial microaggressions are characterized. How challenging they may be to respond to is one of the distinguishing features of racial microaggression, and the literature notes that not reacting may be the most frequent reaction to microaggression. This study addresses racial microaggression existing in the online space. While in many contemporary mainstream spaces explicit bigotry or prejudice is commonly frowned upon, Gant Schaffer, 2017, one way in which contemporary racism can be articulated at an interpersonal level is by racial microaggressions, which are characterized as racial slights that are implicitly offensive or hurtful but are not viewed as full-blown racism. Su et al., 2009. How hard they can be to react to is one of the distinguishing features of racial microaggression. In reality, Su, 2010, argues that not reacting is the most common way to respond to racial microaggression. When they are considered to be socially appropriate actions and dialogue, the beliefs and ideologies underlying microaggressive acts and expression are normalized. This study, therefore, addresses when racial microaggression is most prevalent online, how to tell if a comment is racial microaggressive, which race does it mostly happen to, how to disarm racial microaggression online, how to prevent committing a racial microaggressive comment in the future, and how to address racial microaggression to the online community. Here, we find both a dramatic rise over time in the use of the word microaggression on Facebook and an ongoing debate over its relevance and implications for both people and community. The implications of these results are explored in considering the role of social media debate online in questioning or reproducing ideology racial constructs. Racism is a prevalent social ill around the world, historically speaking. Sometimes it's difficult to identify if someone or something is racist because it often disguises itself as microaggression. Microaggression is an unintended racial slight towards a person of different race. The term microaggression was originally coined by Dr. Chester Pierce in the 1970s, which was later used by Columbia professor Derald Su, who defined the small interactions and understand the negative impacts they have. Although it covers a broad group of people, it usually happens unconsciously and automatically. People who perpetuate microaggression might think of themselves as innocent because they were unaware and caught off guard, but in reality, it is a form of ignorance. According to Dr. Lindsay Perez Huber, Ph.D., 2016, microaggression are a part of systematic racism, the system of structures that have procedures or processes that disadvantage racial minorities. Racial microaggressions are brief, everyday exchanges that send denigrating messages to people of color because they belong to a racist minority group. Su, Buxary, Lynn, Nadal, and Torino, 2007, p. 72. They may take many forms, such as unintentional put-downs, doubts about ability or credentials, assumptions of criminality, and questioning the national origins of others, to mention just a few. Racism is the belief that one race is superior over all the others and, therefore, has the right to dominate, Solorzano et al., 2000. With the rise of the Internet, a rising number of researchers have noticed that bigotry in the online setting will flourish and persevere in overt, blatant ways. Discrimination is a term that has two concepts. The first is positive. To be discriminatory is to have the capacity to judge good from poor, to make fine decisions, to enjoy a true command, within a specific social environment, of the canons of taste. Discrimination, in its negative connotation, is something practiced against persons of color, body form, ethnicity or sexual orientation. There is a connection between the two sets of behaviors denoted by the term discrimination. Both human beings often make important decisions on other people and things, and they are based on the physical and structured features of people and things. In certain cases, such judgment are shifting and subjective. Whether in one sense is a suitable entity or form of personal presentation will appear troubling or indicate a lack of judgment in another context. There is an insidious form of prejudice and racial inequality which in recent years has drawn the attention of psychologists and researchers: racial microaggression. Racial microaggressions, often by well-intentioned citizens, who feel they have done nothing inappropriate, are regular insults or negative tweets aimed at minorities and persons of color. Microaggressions that may be based on gender, race, ethnicity, nationality, sexuality, socioeconomic status, or disability may arise in any minority group. Although culture appears to have developed to see beyond racial lines, it is impossible to argue that bigotry still persists today. It does not, though, often express itself in forms that one might anticipate. Most might picture racial words coming in the form of outright angry hate remarks or acts, but this is not always the case. Leaping to conventional conclusions is something that has been instilled by culture in certain persons, regardless of whether or not they understand it. Comments focused on ethnic preconceptions are still present. Microaggression consists of three forms that further marginalize people: microassault, microinsult, and microinvalidation. As defined by psychologist Derald Wing Su, 2020, a microassault is when a person intentionally behaves in a discriminatory way while not intending to be offensive. A microinsult is a comment or action that is unintentionally discriminatory, while a microinvalidation is when a person's comment invalidates or undermines the experiences of a certain group of people. In the Philippines, it's easy to identify these types of microaggressions towards the minority group and the indigenous peoples. For instance, the Islamophobia is a rampant microassault to Muslim Filipinos because on a daily basis, people are quick to suspect bad intentions to them. I have been wondering why a non-Muslim can grow his beard without any fear of being suspected of bad intentions. But when a Muslim sports a beard, there is a high chance he would be labeled an extremist. I have been wondering why nuns can cover themselves from head to toe, but when an Islam sister does this, she is often misjudged. I have been wondering why, when a person protects his land, he is called a hero, but when a Muslim does it, he is tagged as a terrorist. Musa, 2015. Apart from it is the micro-insult that mostly indigenous peoples like the Bajos and Lumads experience. Although the definition of micro-insult is an unintentional discriminatory comment, slurs like Parakang Bajau are often intentional to people who are seen with ragged clothes, kids who babysit their infant sibling in public, and women with disordered hair. The list could go on, as it also happens with the Lumads, as they are often red-tagged and labeled as a member of the New People's Army, NPA, or a communist group mostly by the military and politicians. Through this dangerous image that was fabricated by the military and politicians, the Lumads are often stereotyped with derogatory comments, but what people don't know is the extreme prejudice Lumads face in their community, like getting killed in broad daylight by armed people and schools and communities being burned down. In the Philippines, IPs have been subject to historical discrimination and marginalization from political processes and economic benefit. They often face exclusion, loss of ancestral lands, displacement, pressures to and destruction of traditional ways of life and practices, and loss of identity and culture, UNDP, 2010. On the other hand, theaters face micro-invalidation as their struggles are often overlooked by those who live in the urban area. People would always blame them for not keeping up with the fast-paced society and that poverty for them is a choice. A common form of micro-invalidation is the implication of being an alien in your own country. Most people stereotype it as primitive and uneducated. It suggests that those who lived in the city, urban area are superior to the likes of them because they have the most access of technology and fast education. Not to mention, they are constantly taken advantage of their lack of education. The objectives of this research are to know when racial microaggression is most prevalent online, how to tell if a comment is racial microaggressive, which race does it mostly happen to, how to disarm racial microaggression online, how to prevent committing a racial microaggressive comment in the future, and how to address racial microaggression to the online community. Moreover, the goal of this research is to make sure to give people safe spaces online without worrying about being singled out, bullied, and discriminated. Microaggressions are topics that need to be taken account of whether it is subtle or unconscious, for there are people who will always be greatly affected no matter what people's attentions are. They may take many forms and everyone is capable of committing them, any place, any time. The purpose of this research is to determine when racial microaggression is most prevalent online, how to tell if a comment is racial microaggressive, which race does it mostly happen, how to disarm racial microaggression online, how to prevent committing a racial microaggressive comment in the future, and how to address racial microaggression to the online community. Facebook is the most populated social media around the world, and it's also infested with people who lack media literacy, thus making it the center of various discussions. This research is a descriptive type, and to properly address the racial microaggression found in the online community, the researcher conducts the investigation specifically on Facebook, since it is where most people flock to share their sentiments. The researcher then creates a private group page and chooses at least 30 participants for it, since academia tells us that 30 seems to be an ideal sample size for the most comprehensive view of an issue, but studies with as few as 10 participants can yield fruitful and applicable results. Participants are between 16 and 22-year-old because people in this age tend to be more active and aware in the online space and in their environment. In addition, the researcher will post pictures, videos, and articles on the said private group page to garner desired reactions from the participants. On the language of microaggression, the online environment is rampant with prejudicial statements against many different populations not in the majority. Bellamy, 2013. Microaggressions are about power imbalance and privilege afforded the dominant culture. These subtle forms of prejudice can create a hostile environment for minorities. The subtleness and frequency of these acts create a sense of losing one's mind because it must be me, support an underlying lack of confidence, and/or generate impotence in action. Su, et al., 2007. The reactions and frequency of these microaggressions in social media can prolong the impact of the statement or behavior. Vulnerable and marginalized populations are especially susceptible to these comments. There are 3 categories of microaggressions that flourish on the internet: microinvalidation, microinsults, and microassaults. Su, et al., 2007. As young people spend more time socializing and learning in online spaces, it is important to recognize how this medium can affect racial messaging. There are many benefits of life in a networked society. About as soon as it happens, we get our news online, keep in contact with friends through social media, and we progress our careers via professional online networks. Yet the internet has a darker side that sees far-right organizations use these distinctive traits to promote racist views, ethnic hatred and distrust. Racism theorists refer to this form of online racial contact as cyber racism. Racism online happen most often when it's politically inclined. News sites would often enable their comment section in order for their readers to exchange opinions and discussions. However, it is mostly abused by those who lack media literacy. Some are trolls while some are from real accounts of real people. Experts have found out that the internet is a strong weapon used to manipulate and enhance controversial ideas. And it's not just coordinated racial organizations that take advantage of online communication, it's even achieved by unaffiliated citizens. The internet is, therefore, a formidable weapon used to exploit and improve divisive concepts. And online networking is not only used by organized ethnic organizations, it is also done by unaffiliated people. In addition, individuals mostly participate in cyber racism to damage others, and by interacting with like-minded individuals to validate their racial beliefs. Blogs, forums, news commentary pages, gaming environments and chat rooms tend to be their favorite contact networks. Obvious bias, such as using race-based insults or intimidation, is easy to see. But there is a type of racial stereotyping that is more subtle and insidious that can be difficult to pin down. Intentional or unintended and even sometimes well-meaning microaggressions may be. Yet to the recipient, they express aggressive, divisive or negative ethnic signals or assumptions. There are instances in which someone makes an inappropriate comment unintentionally, or purposefully, or poses an insulting query. Microaggression is characterized as verbal, behavioral, and environmental indignities that transmit to the target individual or group hostile, insulting, or negative racial slights and insults. A comment becomes racist when the speaker, communicator make ignorant remarks to someone's language, status quo, skin color, education, religion, and culture. In the Philippines, there is an emerging anti-Chinese sentiment resulting in prejudice and even forms of hatred. According to the Social Weather Station's SWS survey in September 2019, China is the least trusted country among Filipinos, with a net trust rating of -33. This negative sentiment can be traced to various geopolitical and socio-economic factors. The news media has consistently reported on illegal activities of migrants including gambling, drug trade, prostitution, and other types of criminalities. The oft-repeated reference to Wuhan, China as source of COVID-19 pandemic has added to negative perception. Some news stories highlight these migrants as competing for limited job opportunities among Filipinos. Prejudices and stereotyping are usually related to health, cleanliness, and wellness, trade and businesses, for example, engaged counterfeit products and services, anti-Filipino attitude, etc. And unfortunately, negative sentiments are also conveyed to Filipino Chinese. It is estimated that there are at least 1.35 million Filipinos with Chinese ancestry or 1.3% of total population. Moreover, difference of opinion and cultural identity of the minorities may not be respected. These minorities can regularly suffer from racial discrimination and be denied human rights. Microaggressions have two components. One is the initiator's deliberate communication, which was presumably meant to be a surface-level compliment. Then there is the subconscious metacommunication, the message conveyed by microaggression. It takes what Dr. Derald Wing Su, a psychology and education professor at Columbia University in New York City, described as microinterventions. To resolve the unconscious note. Microinterventions, he added, need to emphasize the message within the microaggression. Microinterventions, therefore, involve three strategies for allies: make the invisible visible. Oftentimes the perpetrator is unaware that they have engaged in demeaning or offensive comments, so you have to make that visible to them, Su said. Educate the perpetrator by shifting from the focus of what the person intended to the impact. Often when you turn to a person who engages with a microaggression and you point it out to them, they say, "That wasn't my intention at all. Why are you so sensitive? You lose the argument when you focus on intention because you can't prove intent. Focusing on the impact as influenced by the significance, so explained, gets the perpetrator to understand what happened and how he might have caused pain. Disarm the microaggression directly by steering the conversation away from a problematic remark or joke to communicate that it's offensive. You'd be modeling good behavior to other people present, and you can have a later conversation with the person about why his joke was inappropriate. In conclusion, language transforms us for what we are. The specific beings that we are, specific languages made them. So our own language, since it constitutes us and our world, our own special way of being in the world, matters to us. In the world, language makes us at home. It is a crucial part of the link between humans. While all animals have their ways of talking, humans are the only ones who have perfected contact through cognitive words. Language encourages one to communicate with others our concepts, emotions, and feelings. It has the ability to create, but also to break down, communities. The obligations and demands of getting these connections escalate as communications get easier and they make an increasing number of individuals more available than ever before. Think about the very diverse classes of persons with whom we communicate on a regular basis. When our desire to contact group members who are thousands of miles away grows, so too does the need to stay in touch with as many members of the group as possible. What used to be restricted by space, thereby having a very narrow group of individuals, now leads to a very complicated social and professional sphere. It is a matter of fact that the way language is interpreted and used is being changed by social media. Washington, 2020. The importance of language use is apparent in the amount of contact we have on a regular basis, the number of people we associate with, and the type and manner in which we want to interact. It can be quick to be swept up in an online feud when all you meet is on social media. Whether anyone has shared a terrible image of someone else or people are actually talking over politics, before doing something, you need to remain as uninvolved in the chaos as possible and just check your emotions. Being passionate for causes or standing up for your mates is all right, but you need to do it carefully, responsibly, and respectfully. Do not react with pure feeling, or even the first thing that comes to mind. Plan on your answers to be as level-headed as possible, so that when it comes to online communications, you are beyond reproach. Birch, 2020. For those who know how to do it carefully and respectfully, social media can absolutely bring benefits. For some messages, finding the best forum and making sure you are smart about what you share will help you make the most of social media. In an article written by Ella F. Washington, Alison Hall Birch, and Laura Morgan Roberts on July 3, 2020, they have suggested ways on how to respond on microaggressions. There are 3 main ways to react. Let it go. For a long time, the most common default response was choosing not to address offensive comments social media. Because they are pervasive yet subtle, they can be emotionally draining to confront. Yet silence places an emotional tax people, who are left wondering what happened and why, questioning their right to feel offended, and reinforcing beliefs that they are not safe from identity devaluation at work. Respond immediately. This approach allows the transgression to be called out and its impact explained while the details of the incident are fresh in the minds of everyone involved. Immediacy is an important component of correcting bad behavior. But this approach can be risky. The perpetrator might get defensive, leaving the target feeling like they somehow lost control, did not show up as their best self, and will be labeled an overly sensitive whiner, or a troublemaker. Respond later. A more tempered response is to address the perpetrator privately at a later point to explain why the microaggression was offensive. Here, the risk lies in the time lag. A follow-up conversation requires helping the person who committed the microaggression to first recall it and then to appreciate its impact. Such accusations are a form of racial gaslighting, which can be very damaging. Discern. Determine how much of an investment you want to make in addressing the microaggression. Do not feel pressured to respond to every incident, rather, feel empowered to do so when you decide you should. Consider the importance of the issue and the relationship. If either is or both are important to you, avoidance is the wrong approach. Express yourself in a way that honors your care for the other party, and assert yourself in a way that acknowledges your concern about the issue. Your feelings. Microaggressions can make you doubt the legitimacy of your reactions. Allow yourself to feel what you feel, whether it's anger, disappointment, frustration, aggravation, confusion, embarrassment, exhaustion, or something else. Any emotion is legitimate and should factor into your decision about whether, how, and when to respond. With more active negative emotions such as anger, it's often best to address the incident later. If you're confused, an immediate response might be preferable. How you want to be perceived now and in the future. There are consequences to speaking up and to remaining silent. Only you can determine which holds more weight for you in any specific situation. Disarm. If you choose to confront a microaggression, be prepared to disarm the person who committed it. One reason we avoid conversations about race is that they make people defensive. Perpetrators of microaggressions typically fear being perceived, or worse, revealed, as racist. Explain that the conversation might get uncomfortable for them but that what they just said or did was uncomfortable for you. Invite them to sit alongside you in the awkwardness of their words or deeds while you get to the root of their behavior together. Defy. Challenge the perpetrator to clarify their statement or action. Use a probing question, such as "How do you mean that?" This gives people a chance to check themselves as they unpack what happened. And it gives you an opportunity to better gauge the perpetrator's intent. One of the greatest privileges is the freedom not to notice you have privilege, so microaggressions are often inadvertently offensive. Acknowledge that you accept their intentions to be as they stated but reframe the conversation around the impact of the microaggression. Explain how you initially interpreted it and why. If they continue to assert that they didn't mean it like that, remind them that you appreciate their willingness to clarify their intent and hope they appreciate your willingness to clarify their impact. Decide. You control what this incident will mean for your life and your work, what you will take from the interaction and what you will allow it to take from you. Life is sufficiently taxing without allowing microaggressions to bring you down. Let protecting your joy be your greatest and the most persistent act of resistance.